They told me I was going to see terrorists, is what they called them, over and over again. It was in the headlines, the news reports, the social media feeds. Dangerous, radical, violent. I had no reason to question it. It's the world we live in, right? You hear it enough, you believe it. Until I saw it with my own eyes. And what I saw didn't just challenge what I knew. It broke it into pieces. Because when I walked those streets, I didn't see terror. I saw tenderness. I saw boys helping their little sisters cross rubble. I saw fathers rationing food, not for themselves, but for their neighbors. I saw a woman holding her child, whispering prayers with tears on her cheeks, not out of fear, but out of faith. There were no monsters there. Just people. Just lives. People who laugh like us. People who cry like us. People who just want to wake up and know their kids will make it to the next day. What I saw was dignity in the face of devastation. I saw strength, so calm, it didn't need to raise its voice. And there was a beauty in it, an unshakable kind, the kind the media can't capture and the world refuses to see. They had nothing, and yet they gave everything. Their hearts, their time, their food, their stories. And I kept thinking, how could anyone call this terrorism? How could love for your land, your family, your God be anything but sacred? It made me question everything I thought I understood. And when I looked deeper, I realized these people weren't just surviving, they were living with a purpose. Every step, every prayer, every act of kindness, it was rooted in something far greater. It was rooted in Islam. Not the Islam they sell you on the screen, but the Islam that teaches patience when the world collapses, that demands compassion even for your enemies, that holds you to a higher standard even when the world stoops low. I saw it in their eyes, I felt it in their presence, and slowly I began to understand not just what they were fighting for, but what they were living for. And that's when everything changed. They weren't what I expected. I walked in prepared for anger, for bitterness, for hate. That's what I'd been shown, images of masked men and fire and rockets. But when I stepped into their world, I didn't see any of that. I saw a man offering me tea before I could even sit down. I saw children waving from balconies, their smiles bigger than the walls around them. A little girl handed me a flower she picked from a patch of dust and stone. That's not terror, that's humanity. That's love surviving where it shouldn't have to. I remember this old woman sitting outside her home that had been shelled the week before. She looked at me, and all she said was, Alhamdulillah. All praise to God, even now, even here. That's not weakness. That's power the world can't measure. These weren't headlines. These were human beings. You can't fake that kind of peace under pressure. You can't script the kind of grace I saw from people who've lost everything and still smile with a kind of hope that breaks your heart. And yet the world has stripped them of that humanity, made them into shadows, into targets, into symbols of fear. But I saw the truth, and the truth didn't wear a uniform. It wore the face of a child who still believed in tomorrow. And what struck me the most, what changed me, was how they never stopped praying 5 times a day, no matter what. Sirens, smoke, hunger. Nothing stopped that rhythm of devotion. It was quiet. It was steady. It was sacred. I asked one man, how do you still pray after all of this? He looked at me and said, how could I not? That answer hit me deeper than any sermon ever could. It wasn't about ritual. It was about survival of the soul. They were anchored to something eternal, something that couldn't be bombed or broken. And I wanted that, not just to understand it, but to live it. Because in that moment, I saw Islam not as a religion of rules, but as a lifeline, a way to stay human in a world trying to strip you of your humanity. And that's when I knew I wasn't just witnessing something powerful, I was being pulled into it. They say the truth will set you free, but what they don't tell you is that first, it will shake you. It will confront everything you thought was real. That's what happened when I stood there, watching families with nothing, still finding ways to give. When I saw a child offer his only piece of bread to his younger sister, I didn't just see kindness. I saw something deeper, something unbreakable. There were no cameras, no speeches, no headlines. Just a boy, maybe 6 years old, choosing compassion over survival. And that's when I understood these people were living by a code that wasn't about politics or power. It was about faith. And that faith wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was steady. It was quiet. But it was louder than any bomb I'd ever heard of. I saw fathers who had lost everything, still lifting their hands in prayer, still thanking God. I saw mothers who buried their children, still wiping tears from the faces of others. That's not weakness. That's the kind of strength you don't find in soldiers or governments. That's spiritual strength. That's clarity in chaos. And the more I saw it, the more I realized I wasn't just witnessing a people under siege. I was witnessing something divine, a connection to God that didn't break, even when everything else did. I kept thinking, what is this power? What holds them together? What gives them this kind of peace? And the answer kept coming back over and over again: Islam. Not the Islam I was told about, not the Islam they paint in the news. This was real. This was lived. This was breathed. I saw a man make wudu, washing his hands, face, and feet while sitting on a pile of rubble. I saw people lay down their prayer mats next to bomb craters. They didn't stop. They didn't complain. They just prayed. And that prayer wasn't escape. It was presence. It was proof that even in the middle of destruction, their souls were untouched. I didn't go looking for faith, but faith found me through them, through their dignity, through their unwavering belief in something higher. And in that moment, I knew, but I didn't want to just admire it from afar. I wanted to walk that path. I came with questions. I came with doubt. I came with a heavy heart, weighed down by years of confusion, headlines, and fear. I didn't expect answers. I didn't expect change. But what I found in Gaza, what I felt in the presence of these people, was more than truth. It was faith. Not forced on me, not preached to me, just lived, just shown. A boy gave me his last bottle of water. A woman insisted I eat before her, even though she hadn't eaten all day. A man who had lost 3 children still whispered, "God is merciful." That kind of love, that kind of patience, it wasn't human alone. It was something more. It was something divine. The more I watched, the more I listened, the more I realized Islam wasn't what they said it was. It wasn't the religion of fear they painted. It wasn't the other I was taught to be afraid of. It was discipline. It was dignity. It was surrender, not out of weakness, but out of strength. Out of knowing that no matter what's taken from you, your soul is still in the hands of God. I saw that truth again and again in the way they greeted each other with peace, in the way they shared food during Ramadan with strangers, in the way they said Bismillah before eating, Alhamdulillah after tragedy, and Inshallah when talking about tomorrow. Even if tomorrow wasn't promised, there was no sermon, no conversion speech, just a quiet pull, a magnetic peace I couldn't shake. I'd never known a faith that moved through people like that, calm, rooted, real. It wasn't in the mosques alone. It was in how they treated each other, how they held onto hope when the world kept breaking their backs. I started to look at myself, or what I believed, or what I stood for. And I realized I didn't want to just respect Islam. I wanted to live it. I wanted to know the God who gave these people that kind of courage, that kind of heart. And that's how I became Muslim. Not through fear, but through witnessing the purest form of love I'd ever seen. The world is loud when it wants to be. Headlines scream, politicians shout. People argue from behind screens, repeating what they've been told, never asking if it's true. But the truth doesn't need to shout. It just stands. I saw that in Gaza. I saw it in the rubble, in the ruins, in the silence after the bombings. And I saw it in the eyes of the people who had every reason to hate, every reason to give up, but chose not to. That kind of strength doesn't come from politics. That kind of peace doesn't come from power. It comes from truth. And truth, when you see it, doesn't let you walk away the same. I stood in places the world had written off as dangerous, violent, unworthy. But I saw dignity. I saw a young boy writing poetry in a notebook with no cover, his shoes torn but his words whole. I saw a mother teach her daughter how to recite verses from the Quran as warplanes flew overhead. And I asked myself, how? How do they still stand tall? How do they still smile? And then I realized they're not surviving on food or water alone. They're surviving on truth, on conviction, on faith that doesn't bend when the world breaks. You can't unsee what's real. And what's real is this: the people I met didn't need to convince me of anything. They didn't argue. They didn't defend. They just lived with grace, with integrity. And that was louder than any lie I had ever been told. I started to see how deep the deception ran, how easy it was to paint resistance as terror, to paint faith as fanaticism. But when truth stands in front of you, you either ignore it or you rise with it. And I couldn't ignore it anymore. I used to think being silent was neutral, that staying out of it was safe. But when you've seen what I've seen, silence is betrayal. Staying silent meant allowing the lie to live while the truth bled out in the street. And I couldn't do that. Not after seeing their courage, not after feeling their faith. Speaking out isn't bravery, it's the bare minimum. Because when the truth costs lives, telling it becomes an obligation. I didn't go there searching for religion. That wasn't my goal. I wasn't looking to change who I was or how I lived. I just wanted to understand why people were willing to endure so much, lose so much, and still hold on to something so tightly. I thought I was going to study their struggle. I didn't realize their struggle would end up studying me. I didn't realize I would be the one under the microscope, the one being changed. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, gentle, like water carving into stone. Day by day, moment by moment, something inside me began to shift, because what I saw in those people wasn't just strength, it was purpose. They moved with intention. They spoke with heart. They prayed like their lives depended on it, and in many ways they did. But there was no fear in it. There was calm. There was submission, yes, but not the kind the world misunderstands. This was submission to peace, to balance, to justice, to something greater than this broken world. That word, Islam, it started making sense. Not as a label, not as a political symbol, but as a way to live, a way to breathe with meaning. I met a man who had lost 3 brothers, yet he greeted me with a smile and said, "It's all from Allah." I watched a teenage girl whose home was flattened still finish her Quran recitation before joining her mother to clean the debris. This wasn't just resilience, it was belief. And I started to see the pieces fall into place, the discipline, the peace, the structure, the surrender. All of it forming a system that didn't break people, it built them. It gave them something the world couldn't take away. And I wanted that. Not just the feeling of peace, but the foundation of it. So I began to ask, I began to read, I began to pray, not because anyone told me to, but because something inside me needed to. And in that quiet seeking, I found something I never had before. Clarity. I wasn't just moved by their faith, I was led to it. It was like a door that had always been open, and I finally had the courage to walk through. And on the other side, I found myself. They told me not to say anything, to keep it to myself. Be careful, they said. You don't want to ruin your reputation. But how do you stay silent when the truth grabs you by the soul? And when the lies you were raised on start crumbling right in front of you? When the very people the world called terrorists showed you more love, more hospitality, and more faith than you'd ever seen in your life? How do you not speak? How do you not stand? I didn't come to this decision overnight. I wrestled with it. I stayed up nights thinking about what it would mean, the labels, the backlash, the questions. But every time I thought about staying silent, I remembered the faces of those I met. The boy who walked barefoot across rubble to fetch water for his family. The girl who carried books through a war zone just to keep learning. The man who still said, "Peace be upon you," to strangers, even after losing everything. They didn't hide who they were, so why should I? They taught me courage. Not the kind you see in movies, not fists and fire, but the courage to still believe in goodness, to pray under bombs, to love your enemy, to hold your ground without losing your soul. And if they could do that in the face of everything, the least I could do was speak. The least I could do was stand tall and say, "I see you. I believe you, I stand with you, and more than that, I found myself with you." So yes, they called them terrorists, but I saw the truth. I saw faith that held people together. I saw Islam lived in its purest form. I saw the beauty of surrender, the strength of belief, and the miracle of peace in the middle of chaos. And I didn't just see it, I felt it. I lived it. I carried it back with me. And now, I'm not afraid to say it. I'm a Muslim because of what I saw, because of who I met, because of the truth they tried to bury but couldn't silence.